Hi guys, this is Sai Kumar Kurtiwada. In this video, we will learn in advanced things how we can do this context API in our Solid.js and how to reframe all our structure which we did in our part 1 of context API. If you want to know more about a basic stuff of context API, I request you to watch my previous video for better understanding. I'll provide the link in the description. Please watch that before going further. So let me quickly jump into Visual Studio Code. This is my example where user details is the signal and that signal gets updated. Whenever that signal gets updated, I am getting this provider value. Whenever that signal gets updated, all my consumers will be updating that value without passing to the nested components. Instead, it will directly point to the provider and it will get the value and it will showcase the UI. Now, we are creating the context here itself, but there may be a chance where user details can be updated by anyone like age or name or anything, but that whole updation can be handled in a particular component and that component can be a context API component. So let me go here and what I'll do is just I'll create one more file called as user context.jsx and let me create same like scomp, the function component, and now I'll use this user context. Instead of using this user context directly, I'll use this component and this component will help us to add some extra features to our context API. For example, I have this export const. Let me cut this and paste here. So I'm creating the context and I don't want to expose this context directly. Instead, I'll expose this user context component and let me copy this and put it over here. Save this. Now I have created this user context. Let me import the values, create context from Solid.js. Now you have created the user context. So what is our next target is this is a signal. Actually speaking, that signal is not responsible for the app component. It is required in our user context. So let me go here and put it inside the function. Now let me save this. Next, I want to use this particular component to pass some set of data to our consumers. So how I can do that? By using user context dot provider, and this provider will receive a value. We'll talk about the value a bit later. Now this user context can receive the props and already we know that these props can be used anywhere. So let me use that props, something like props dot children, and save this. Now wherever this component is used, all the remaining components or the nested components will have the access to this value. So what should be the value over here? So what I'll do is instead of passing only the value, I'll also pass some external features to it. So something like const context data is equal to, I'll pass user details and I'll pass something like update age that I'll be creating now. Instead of doing all this logic over here, what I'll do is I'll just create update age method. So const update age and it's an arrow function, and inside this arrow function what I'll do is I'll just update my user details. Set user details and I want to receive update by value. So what value I want to take and how much I need to update that age. So let me use an arrow function and this arrow function will return a object and this object will receive all my user details and update only the age. Age that should be equivalent to my previous age value plus the value whatever you want to update. So update by value. Now this is a method which helps us to update the value of our age property. Let me save this. Now this context data I'll pass it to our value property. So this value property will receive the context data object. Now let me remove this button and instead I'll be creating one more component. So let me go and create one more component called as update age.jsx and just create scomp and this update age component will have a button over here, and what it has to do is its responsibility is to, whenever we click that button, it has to call the context update age method. So let me update the age and let me use onClick, and this onClick will receive a arrow function, and you want to consume that context method now. So how to consume? So let me go here and inject our update age, save this, and now update age is another component. This component should consume that context. For consumption, what I'll do is I'll just go into the context, and instead of returning this default value, what I'll do is I'll return a function again, and this function will return or use context, and that context will be having a user context. Let me copy this and paste here. Let me save this. So now I'm exporting both functions from this particular context. Now what I'll do is I'll just use this particular function for our context consumer, something like context consumer, or you can use any of the function name. So this function name will help us to get all the context details. And let me go to the update age. Previously we have used use context. Now no need to use context, because when we call this function, automatically use context will be called. So let me copy this context consumer, and let me use context consumer, import this, and this will return you some set of object values, and that values will be user details and update age. And I don't want to use user details, I want to get only update age. So let me go here and let me destructure this with the update age if you want. Otherwise you can use an object format also. Now this context consumer will return the values of user details and update age method. So I want to call this update age method over here, and it requires a value to pass. I want to increment 5 every time when I click that particular button. So now when I click this, it has to go into the context and it has to update the age. Now let me go into our user age. So here what I'll do is, instead of using all these context details, I just use this function. So let me go to the context consumer and use this. So this one will give two things, user details, and also it will give update age. Now I am passing this value as an object, so I am accessing it by using object, and it can receive the object value. And in the same way, you have something called as name. How to access the name? So let me go into the user name component, and inside this let me use something like this and import it. So now all my logic went into one particular file of that context API. The provider is here and the consumer is here, and just we are utilizing them wherever it is required. In my user age, I am getting the details and showing the age. In my username, I am getting the consumer data or consumed data, and I am showing the name property. And also we have update age, where we can access the method and update particular signal which is present in that context. Let me go to the browser and reload. So it looks the same way. Let me click this. It is updating only 1+1. So let me go to the inspect console. So it is something like does not provide an exported user context. Okay, so here whenever you have app, we are using user context.provider. Actually speaking, we don't have user context.provider now. Let me remove this user context provider and import this one. What is that? The context provider, and that context provider is user context component. And let me go here, just use this user context component, and here let me wrap this, format this, and save this. Now go back, clear this off, reload. So it's still showing a provided user context. Why? Because we are not importing this. Let me import and save this. Now we are getting this user context component from user context, and let me go here and just reload. user age. Okay, so let me go into user age and let me remove all the unwanted code from here. Because of that unwanted code we are getting the errors. Let me go here, clear this off, reload. Now again we got some more error, create signal. So let me go into our user context and let me import the create signal here. So let me import this and minimize this, go here, just reload. So now you got all the details, and when I click on this, it is updating with 5. So previous value plus 5, previous value plus 5. Wherever you want, you can consume that methods, you can consume that values. Now, you may be asking, what is the difference between previous one and the current one? Actually speaking, app component should be isolated. That means it should not be clumsy with number of context APIs created over there. Instead, you can create that as a separate functionality. That is one advantage. And the second advantage is, if you want to enhance your context APIs and you can write your customized logics in the future, and if you want to change some logic, it is very easy to go and change in a particular file, and that particular values can be exported or can be utilized very easily. Third thing is, we are creating the context at a global level. Previously, if you are creating the context at a global level, there may be a chances of using this for unwanted stuff, and that may be creating a security concerns. Now in this case, we have restricted our context API to use only by using a component, not with an export function. So we are not exporting globally. Instead, we are wrapping all our consumer logic inside the separate functions, and when that functions gets executed, only that time we will be getting that context APIs. So that also helps us to solve our security concerns or security problems. So that's how we have used our context API as a separate function, and we have created our custom context APIs, and we have used in our components at different level, at different nested levels, and also between these sibling components. These two are the sibling components. Here also I am consuming that particular context API. Here also I am consuming that context API. And when this gets updated, this is also getting updated. That means they are communicating, and there is a sibling communication between these two components. Even context API helps us to do the sibling communication between the components. So that's about your context API. Hope you like my explanation. If you like my video, like, share, subscribe to my channel for more updates. Signing off. Thank you.